Representative Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Occam's razor holds that the simplest explanation is almost always the best. Incompetence is often a simpler explanation than malevolence, but maybe the opposite is true when it comes to the CCP. When it comes to China's pattern of overproducing and underpricing manufactured goods like vehicles, how much of the overcapacity is malevolence and how much of it is an unintended consequence of China's economic model, which has been described as involution? So, Ms. Dezenski, do you want to?
It's a great question.
Because China has been lamenting involution, so I'm
Right.
struggling. Is it malevolence or incompetence?
Well, I think that they recognize the concern. I mean, there's a bloodbath going on in the domestic market, the domestic auto market in China, because they're undercutting each other. It's an absolute mess. But the subsidies are continuing to flow to the state-sponsored entities and mechanisms that push the export control model to go even faster and even larger. There is no real indication that the CCP wants to put reforms in place that would push back against the deflationary spiral. Eventually, I think they're going to have to do that. But they're going to try to maximize this export model for as long as they possibly can. And the reality is they can probably hold out a little bit longer. So that's why I think there's a real urgency around responding to this. So I think it's part by design, and it's part a system that has now taken on a life of its own, but politically is very, very difficult to move in a different direction.
You know, history tells us that wars are won not only in the battlefield, but in the factory. The US won World War II because it stood out as the arsenal of democracy with an industrial base that could be rapidly and readily repurposed in a time of war. During World War II, the US marshaled its industrial might to produce tens of thousands of tanks, hundreds of thousands of aircraft, millions of trucks, and automobile manufacturing in particular was the backbone of America as the arsenal of democracy. Detroit alone produced more war material than fascist Italy. Is the US as the arsenal of democracy simply a relic of the past? Can it be rebuilt? Can it ever be made to rival the manufacturing might of China?
I don't think it's out of the question. I think we have to consider what's in the arsenal of the modern day. What does that look like? Where do we need to go on drone production? Where do we need to go on advanced manufacturing in general? What are the tools of the future to protect our homeland, to work with our allies and partners? So that mix of technology and manufacturing prowess is going to look different. It has to evolve. But I'm not sure we're thinking about it in terms of building that arsenal. And we should.
You know, China has built what Noah Smith calls the electric tech stack, on which the world has become increasingly and dangerously dependent. So the electric tech stack consists of core technologies like batteries, chips, magnets. As all of you know, China dominates battery manufacturing. It controls almost all of the world's rare earth refining and magnet production. It mass produces legacy chips on a scale that no other country can rival. You know, President Donald Trump opposes both the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act, both of which were aimed at creating an electric tech stack made here in America. Mr. Ludwig, is it in the strategic and security interest of the US to become dependent on China's electric tech stack rather than create one here in America?
We should absolutely not become dependent on China's electric tech stack. I would furthermore add that from the perspective of the auto industry, of which I'm a representative, we don't care whether people are buying EVs or internal combustion engines. The auto industry will create and produce what the consumer demand is. And consumers are extremely rational buyers of vehicles, and they are very thoughtful in terms of cost.
But China's outproducing us on both fronts.
Absolutely.
Right? It's producing more vehicles than the United States, Germany, and Japan combined.
Absolutely. My final point, though, is I think demand for EVs is actually largely driven by electricity prices as one point. So in California, where I live, I pay almost $1 per kilowatt hour of electricity, which makes my wife's vehicle actually more expensive to operate than my gas vehicle. And so I think that the cost of electricity is actually a primary driver of of demand for electric vehicles.
And China's emerged as the solar superpower, so it has plenty of energy.
Absolutely.
From all sources. So thank you, Mr. Chair.